Alright, the final week is upon us, the inaugural Indian Grand Prix later this week, and for many people it's like an early Diwali gift. And Karun, is it something like an early Diwali gift or a proper Diwali gift for you?
I think so for the fans in India and for the motorsport fans, especially. I think it's a real Diwali gift. I think it's something we've all waited for a very long time to see F1 in India, and it's also so nice to see the country really getting behind it. The media, the fans, a lot of the companies are advertising around the race. So it's nice to see a lot of hype around the race.
Has the reaction at all surprised you, considering that you've been interacting with the media for many years?
Yeah, I think it's been a pleasant surprise. I expected it to be a big story. Didn't expect it to be as big a story as we're seeing. Every newspaper I opened had full page, if not supplements or half-page stories at least about the race, and every news channel has been running features. And it's been really nice to see everyone getting behind it.
Do you think India is coming to grips with Formula 1, or is it just hype at this particular point of time and the real test will come after the race?
Both. I think the fact that India's so far got behind the race means that there's a lot of hype building up to the race. There's a lot of excitement building up to the race, which is nice to see. What happens in the long term, we can only determine in the 1 or 2 months after the race. So we'll wait and see. I mean, it's not an answer I can give you today. We've got to just wait and see how things pan out.
Well, is there a concern for you that possibly the interest around Formula 1 or interest around motorsports is only restricted to Formula 1 and the Indian Grand Prix, and it may not percolate down to the lower levels of motorsport, which is the most important thing for India right now?
I don't think that's, again, something we can answer today. And I don't think that's true either, because as soon as there's interest in the sport at the top level, it will percolate down. There's no doubt about it. Already we have manufacturers interested in starting up driving academies, in setting up drive centers, in setting up a structured program to develop Indian talent, which is something I've talked on and on about for the last 10 years. And I think a lot of that has come from the interest level that is existing in F1 at this moment. And this is, we really have to seize the moment and capitalize on it to build up the grassroots infrastructure.
In that sense, do you think that Formula 1 or Formula 1 in the wider motorsport scenario of India typifies the Indian impatience to get to the top level without really going through the motions of putting the structure together, developing the drivers or developing the athletes, and developing a system which can really be a long-term churning out process?
No, but I don't understand what is wrong in starting at the top. I mean, I completely disagree that, if you say that we need to build from the grassroots level. I think that's, yes, we have to build a grassroots level. I'm not saying no, but I think you have to understand that the grassroots level is not going to build itself. It takes money, and it takes investment, and it takes corporate support. And none of these people are going to get interested if you have nothing to sell. So if you have F1 to sell, therefore you have an audience, therefore you can also sell, the rest of it as a piggyback to F1. So I think it's completely wrong to say that starting at the top typifies our way to a shortcut, because that's not true. I think starting with, having F1 come to India is a catalyst to everything else happening, I hope.
Well, then, how far do you see this catalyst developing as far as this particular Indian Grand Prix is concerned, and let's say the first 3 years?
I think looking at what I've seen over the last couple of months, I'm very optimistic that it's going to go well. But this is a question that we can't answer today, and I don't think we can answer for a few months ahead. We have to look sitting in January perhaps at the effect that the Indian GP has had, and in the long term, where that's going to take things forward.
Now let's just go back in time a little bit and really look at the origins of your interest in motorsport. At that point of time, did you ever believe that an Indian Grand Prix would come when you were still finding your feet in Formula 1, still at a young age?
I think I believed in the dream of me getting to F1 more than I believed in the dream of F1 coming to India. I think possibly because you have to believe in that dream to get to where I have today. You know, it's a tough sport, but I don't think I ever believed that there'll be an Indian Grand Prix genuinely. And really, I think you know, I feel very grateful to the JP Group for bringing this to our country. You know, they were the ones who went out on a limb. It's a hugely ambitious project. It's a hugely expensive project to do, but they've done it. They've done it on their own, and it's fantastic to see.
Do you think in the build up to this Indian Grand Prix, maybe the media is overstating the importance of having an Indian Grand Prix in India and not really understanding the importance of Formula One in the larger perspective?
In what sense?
Well, not just really. If you look at the season gone by, there's not been that much interest in Formula One when, let's say, last year when you were driving in Formula One, not the kind of interest that should have been invested in Formula One when you were driving, an Indian was driving in Formula One, this year when Narain was driving in Formula One, but when an Indian Grand Prix is coming over here, and that's because it's over here in Delhi, it's just a little easier, a little more convenient to get to in terms of coverage. Is that, well, looking at both sides of the coin, really a good thing or slightly a bad thing as well?
No, but I'm trying to understand why you're trying to poke holes in a good story, because at the end of the day, we have a race coming to India, finally. We have the media behind it. We have a huge amount of people who have bought tickets. I'm still trying to see what your downside to this story is, because at the end of the day, this is what we want. We want a successful event where the media are behind it and everyone's excited about it. The whole of Delhi is excited. The whole of India is excited. It's a fantastic sporting event for India. It's a historic sporting event for India. I'm trying to see where the downside lies in your question.
Well, the excitement has been stated enough. But really speaking about, like, I'm trying to get at the larger perspective, because we've all gone
Look,
down.
We don't have a knowledge base in India.
Exactly.
We have a fan base.
That's exactly what I was trying to get at.
How are you going to build a knowledge base if people don't know what it is? You know, I mean, if people, till now, F1 is this far-off sport that runs in far-off countries, which they see it on TV, and it's a long-lost dream. You know, when they see it in their own backyard and they see the cars in front of them and they hear it and they feel the ground shake when 24 cars do the first lap, you know, it strikes a chord. And you can't underestimate that, you know. And I think you have to understand that seeing F1 on TV and seeing F1 live are two very different things. And the way that you're going to build a knowledge base is by getting people excited about something. You know, if I'm excited about cycling, then I'll watch it. If I'm not, for example, I don't get excited by watching squash, I don't watch it. It's the same thing. You know, if people get excited about Formula One, then they're going to watch it, then they want to know more about it. Then instead of watching one race, they'll watch 19 races. It's the same thing, you know. So I think it's, you know, I think it's wrong to really question people who are only getting excited now rather than having got excited for the previous 16 races.
So do you see this excitement continuing? Is the question that I'm asking again. And why I'm asking that question again is because because of your father, because of your lineage, and because of all that you've invested in the lower forms of motorsport through the years and been patiently climbing through the ladders. I've interacted with you a number of times when you were, well, literally trying to knock on the doors of Formula One. Do you think that just takes away the focus, the focus on the Indian Grand Prix just takes away the focus from those lower forms of motorsport which are essential to develop a constant stream of Indian drivers and really provide for a successful product in the larger perspective, the larger picture, is the point that I'm trying to get at. Because looking around, one doesn't really get the sense that people are looking beyond Formula One. People are just really looking at this Indian Grand Prix, and the concern that rises is, are they going to be interested in Formula One?
That's a very short-term view. You're
Indian Grand Prix.
You're looking at a very short-term view. You know, you're looking at today. That's obviously people are going to talk about F1 today. I don't think you're fully appreciating or understanding how big F1 is and how much worldwide F1 is so much bigger than any other form of motorsport. Everything else is like this compared to F1 being like this. All other forms of motorsport put together are this. F1 on its own is this. You have to understand that. That is a worldwide thing. It's not just India. And what we need to do is use the hype of F1 and piggyback on that and build up the grassroots level. You know, by getting the same manufacturers, the same sponsors who are investing in F1 to try and use a percentage of that budget to develop national sport and domestic sport and karting and grassroots level. That's the only way it's going to happen. The return on investment from karting or from grassroots level or from national level of racing is minimal compared to the return on investment from a sponsor. And it's pure commercial sense for any sponsor to invest in F1 rather than grassroots level. But it's also essential for the development of the sport that sponsors invest in that. You know, it's fantastic that companies like JK Tyre and Amron have gone and invested in it, and you know, I think it is completely essential that they do. But you can understand why sponsors feel that they need to invest directly in F1 without doing that. But what I'm saying is all these junior formulas need to piggyback and get a percentage of that money. You know, at the end of the day, we're not a government recognized sport. We're not going to get government funding. So all these questions that you keep asking me about developing grassroots, it's essential, about national racing, who's going to develop it? Are you going to write me a big check? If you do, then I'll quite happily go create some national racing for you. You're not going to do it. I can't afford to do it. You know, the government aren't, you know, it's not one of their sports, so they're not going to fund it. So therefore, this is the way it's going to happen. You know, it's simple as that.
Well, no one could have stated that point better. I concede that point to you. Would it be fair to say that at this point? But really, Karun, now speaking about your own personal perspective as far as this Indian Grand Prix is concerned, what does it really mean to you, away from the hype and away from the gloss and sheen that one has seen around this particular event? What does it really mean to you? You just said your dream is to be in F1 rather than driving an Indian Grand Prix.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me and for my family, you know, my grandfather was really one of the, I think, the founders, it's fair to say, of motorsport in India. He founded, he was one of the founders of the federation, the ASN, of which Vijay Mallya is now the chairman and my father is now the president. So obviously, you know, my family for 3 generations has been very involved in the sport. My grandfather has never been to an F1 race, but he's coming this weekend. So it means a lot to him to see, you know, how much the sport has grown. I was just talking to him this morning on the phone, and he was talking about how he raced in Barrackpur in Calcutta in 1953, and in Sholavaram in Chennai in 1958, in the old Jaguars, alongside the Maharajas at that time. And you know, I think it's going to be a real eye-opener for him to see how much, you know, how different Formula One is to anything that he may have seen before. And my father, of course, you know, he and I are both consultants to the JP Group, and we worked very hard with them over the last 18 months. And my dad is very involved with the sport in general. We have a fantastic relationship with Bernie Ecclestone, and we've worked a lot with him to make the race happen. So no, I think personally for our family, it certainly means a hell of a lot.
And are you satisfied with the end product that the JP Group has managed to put out?
Well, we're not at the race weekend yet, so I'll tell you that answer on Monday after the race.
Well, on that point, let's just head into a short break where we'll be continuing to chat with Karun and really take this discussion forward and talk a lot more about personalities in Formula One on the other side of the break. Stay tuned. Alright, still in conversation with Karun Chandhok, of course someone who is known as a brand ambassador for the sport in India. And Karun, Narain was the first one to drive in Formula One, but in the last few years we've seen you become the voice of Formula One, if one is to speak about the sport in the country. Does that have to do with your lineage? Does that have to do with your image? Does that have to do with the way you think about the sport? What is it all about? Be very honest.
You have to tell me. You know,
you think you speak very well about Formula One.
I am who I am. I do what I do. I say what I say. You know, at the end of the day, what impression that leaves on people's minds, whether it's what you've just said, I don't know. As I say, you know, this is my personality. I've always been a very outgoing person. I always felt a sense of responsibility to go out and promote my sport and to educate people about the sport. And that's why I write columns and, you know, do commentary work and do as many TV things that I could do, and really go out and talk about the sport, because I feel very privileged to be in an exclusive club of 2 out of 1.2 billion who have experienced the world of Formula One from the inside. and therefore feel I have a little bit of a right to talk about the sport. So no, as I said, but I just do whatever I feel is right and is natural.
Well, two personalities in 1.2 billion, like you just said. In a country as obsessed with personalities and individuals as India, do you get the kind of recognition that would be representative of the minute number that you're in?
I don't know. I mean, if you're talking about do people on the street recognize us, I don't really notice. And to be honest, I'm not. It makes actually not much difference to my life. In the sense, you have to understand. It's funny. I saw an interview with Shah Rukh Khan where he talked about when he got into film. You know, he wanted to be the biggest star in the world, and he wanted the whole world to know his name, and he really wanted to be, be famous. I don't. I'm quite happy.
Come on, everyone wants to be famous.
No, I mean, in the sense, I don't. It's very different. You have to understand. I got into this sport not because I wanted to be famous. I got into the sport because I like driving race cars. I got into the sport not really to make money. There's a famous saying in racing, to make $1 million, you have to start with $1 billion. And it's true because I've gone to bankruptcy. But, I was a kid who loved Formula One, loved racing, loved cars. I'm now an adult who loves racing, loves cars, and loves driving. So, that's why I'm in the sport. On my days off and my weekends off, some drivers might be sitting on the beach in Monaco. I go drive my go-kart. I bought myself a go-kart. I have a track 20 minutes down the road from my house. That's what I do. I call a couple of friends and we go go-karting. This is what I love doing, So, like I say, I mean, for me, things like being recognized and things like that is, of course, it's very nice when people come up and have a kind word to say on a flight or a restaurant or whatever, and I really appreciate their good wishes. But that's not my motivation for being in the sport.
Well, speed is a passion with almost every man in this world, every man who can drive. That's a passion. That's probably why Formula One or motorsports really attracts the kind of attention. Does that also place a responsibility upon the driver or the rider himself to care about safety, considering the 2 accidents that we've had in the last few days?
I think, we've had obviously these 2 accidents, which has highlighted the danger angle of our sport. It is, especially with Dan Weldon. I mean, Marcos is with two-wheeler racing, and it was extremely unfortunate what happened to him. But it's, and both the accidents, even Dan's, was something out of their control, I believe. It's just circumstances didn't work out for them. Extremely unfortunate. It was bad time, bad place. It just didn't work out. For myself, Dan's accident was something that struck a chord a bit differently because it was in car racing, not too dissimilar from what we do. But as a racing driver, you accept risks, you accept that it is a dangerous sport, possibly. But at the same time, I believe there's an element of fate involved. More people get killed on the streets of Delhi in one day than they do on a racetrack in 1 year. So does that stop you or me from driving on the streets of Delhi? No, it doesn't. When people get killed in an air crash, it's extremely sad, but does it stop you or me getting on a plane later that night to go fly back home to see our families? No, it doesn't. So I think it's a bit of a cold thing to say, and it's a bit of a hard-hearted, possibly, thing to say, but we have to, in many ways, just try and get it out of our minds and just get on with it, and that's why we're in the sport, is to perform to the best of our abilities. And the day that you start having doubts and about safety and questioning the safety of the sport, I think then it's time to quit, because it'll automatically mean you've lost 2 or 3 tenths.
And given the mindset of Indian parents, did your parents ever say, "I hope you return home safe from this race weekend"?
No, I'm sure my mum, I'm sure she gets nervous, and I'm sure she's worried, and I know my grandmom is, and, but that's never stopped them. I'm sure they worry like any other parent. in a sense when when parents send their children off to university, for example, they are worried about their safety. If somebody's parents send them off to Australia or to America or to England or wherever, they are, they do, I'm sure, get worried or nervous about the safety of their kids. And it's not, it's just life, isn't it? You can't control everything.
Well, does that aspect really make someone like a Michael Schumacher, someone who's never really been touched by unfortunate accidents or unfortunate circumstances on the track, really seem like a legend who's coming over here and people will finally get to see him in person? Does that really add to the sense of the occasion as far as the Indian Grand Prix is concerned?
Well, first of all, Michael broke his leg in 1999 and was out of action for 6 months.
I forgot I was talking to someone who knows his Formula One much better than any of us do.
So that's not true. Secondly, he broke his neck on a bike in 2010.
Yes, exactly. I forgot about that as well.
That's also not true. But I think let's go back to the point of your question is Michael is one of the true big stars of our sport over the last 60 years. I think he is certainly one of the top 5 stars the sport has ever had. He has an enormous fan following wherever we go. And I think India should feel extremely privileged that we're seeing the most successful driver in the history of F1 come and drive at the first Indian Grand Prix.
Well, is it a tad ironic in a way that his legend or his fame has been overshadowed by someone who's been called his successor and someone, Sebastian Vettel, who's managed to break through in the last 2 years, like probably Michael Schumacher did at the beginning of his career?
Yes and no. I mean, I think everybody who's a fan of F1, whether they were a fan or not of Schumacher in his first era, would love to see him do well now. I think it's a nice story. It's a nice story for F1 if Michael can get a podium sometime soon. It's good for him. It's good for F1. I think it's a nice story. Sebastian himself has done an outstanding job this year. He's been supremely confident in qualifying, and then has been able to use those results on Saturday to really his benefit on Sunday in the races. And I think nobody should begrudge him the World Championship or both his World Championships. He has been the best driver for the last 2 years. He's put himself in a position where he's in the best car, but you still have to drive it. It's like getting to the bottom of the hill when you're cycling up the Alps. You might have the best cycle in the world worth 10 lakhs, but you still have to pedal it up the hill. And it's the same thing. Sebastian has really, I think he's probably the best qualifier we've had in F1 for a very long time. And this year he's shown a level of maturity and confidence to deliver the results in the races. So I think nobody should begrudge him the championships.
Is India really technically equipped, or is there a knowledge base in the country, even amongst F1 fans, to really understand the technicalities of the sport and understand that even if someone is leading from pole to finish, that's not really a bad race, a boring race, but a very well thought out strategic race that one has to appreciate, and that's the nature of the sport. Is there that kind of maturity amongst Indian F1 fans?
Probably not. No. I mean, we have 25 million people who watch Formula One on television in India. Maybe 5% really understand the pit stop strategies and the tire strategies and why you use a certain tire at a certain time of the race, etc., etc. Maybe another 20% understand a bit more, and maybe 50% understand a bit more. But the other 50% probably watch it as entertainment. We are sort of in the entertainment business in many ways. I think some ministers even told us that this week, I believe. But at the end of the day, I believe it's a sport still because there is competition. And anywhere where there's competition is a sport. You're competing with, with physical ability. You're competing with technology. Obviously, is involved. But it's a fascinating sport, and I think people appreciate that in India. They may not have the knowledge, but they still appreciate it.
A fascinating sport that needs the symbolism of an Indian driver driving in an Indian Grand Prix. Is that the way you look at it?
I believe it's a fascinating sport that needs an Indian driver always in F1 permanently and being successful in F1. I think the difference between we've now had two Indian drivers in F1.
Right.
It's been extremely hard for Narain and me to get to where we have today. But the next level is for us to get get with the midfield team and be in a position that we start to score points, and then hopefully be one day in a team which allows us to get on a podium one day.
And how do you see the next line of Indian drivers progressing through? Indian drivers who can take the flag carrying forward beyond the next 10 years in an Indian Grand Prix?
It's tough to say. I think we've got a few drivers today, younger drivers. We've got some kids who are doing the JK Racing Asia Series, for example, or other Formula racing. But until and unless they go to Europe and win races in Formula 3 or GP2, or World Series, a truly high-class championship like Narain did or like I did, it's hard to say whether they are really F1 material or not. I think you need to be successful in Europe. You need to score podiums. You need to, on a regular basis, you need to win races. You need to prove that you can fight against the best drivers outside of F1 to really show that you deserve a place in F1.
Well, on that note, thanks a lot, Karun, for speaking with us. All the very best. Hope to see you driving in a mid-level team, as you said, next year throughout the season, and seeing you as a points contender in next year in the Indian Grand Prix. Thanks a lot, Karun, for joining us.
Thank you.